I'd rather create something that others criticize than create nothing and criticize others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Hospopreneurs Podcast. Today on the show we join Chef Casey Poland at Sasquatch Bar in Chermside for an episode on Japanese philosophy, the 4-day work week and chef training. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, Casey.
G'day James, how you doing?
Very well, thanks mate, very well. Thank you for asking me how I'm doing today. Mate, I like to start the show by asking if you've got a crazy hospitality story.
Oh, crazy hospitality stories. Probably, I don't know, first one comes to mind. A couple of years ago, I helped open a restaurant in Japan. So we opened at the start of winter season and went all the way through 31 days of work. December, and my last 2 shifts of my stint were New Year's Eve all the way till the end. Which turned into a bit of a bender after that. But I was also on breakfast shift in the morning, which in Japan, when you show up to work, super wankered. Doesn't look very good, but it was fun. We're in a hotel doing breakfast, and I was pulling out of the stops doing fancy breakfast. I had a really good time, but I did crash at lunch. And ended up hugging the toilet.
Oh no!
But still very, very good.
Made it all the way to lunchtime though.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good. That is a good effort. Yeah, but I want to ask you about any patrons. So any crazy things you've seen in the bar, like weird, wonderful, exciting. It's just, we see all sorts of crazy things in the bar.
Oh, definitely. Well, to be honest, I'm a chef. I work out the back, and I don't necessarily see a lot out the front, but I was working another time in a different Japanese restaurant where we had an open kitchen. One Friday night there was a particularly raucous table. I don't know if this is super child friendly. One lady though had...
we can use coarse language on the show, so that's
fantastic.
No problem.
One lady had chowed through way too much sake, and ended up weeing her pants at the table, which was all over the floor, ran underneath the tables behind her, caused quite a bit of drama, and that's a pretty hard mess to clean up quietly at 7:30, 8 p.m. on a Friday night at a full restaurant.
So, man, what the hell? That's pretty hectic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Luckily I was too busy behind the bar, so I wasn't recruited to go and help clean up that mess.
Shit. Oh man. Well, you mentioned you talked a bit about Japan. Got a couple of experiences in Japan.
Yep.
Did you work a bit in Japan?
So I had a really great experience working at Sake on Eagle Street Pier under Chef Shinichi Maeda, who has a bit of a name for himself, or did do in Australia. He finished up his time here and went back home to the homeland to open a fine dining restaurant. So I left at the same time and went over to Japan to help him get that going.
Cool. Okay.
So I lived in Japan for a year in another area, but worked with him for the full winter season.
Okay.
Which was about 4 months there.
Yeah, right. So what did you do in that process of opening the venue?
Oh, all of the things. When you walk into a new build, we were helping paint, helping fix, helping, with all things, all of the equipment comes in, you unpack it, all the food comes in, start getting into that. Yeah. Preparing a restaurant from zero to opening day is, when you're already running, you've got your jobs to do each day, but you end up, when you're opening, you've got maybe 24 hours to prep everything, as well as all of the extras for your opening party, and it's a whole lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But obviously has big rewards. There's nothing quite like, slapping the backs of your teammates at the end of that first night.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, so much build up to then There you go. It'd be a relief, but then there's plenty more to come. That's when it really begins.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's not it. The work's only just starting when you get to the end of that first night. That's for sure.
I got a quick question there. Well, a quick question to run with now, because we've talked a little bit about, started delving into your background a little more. I want to come back to that because I think that a really important question first to ask is why you do what you do.
Like a lot of chefs, why I do what I do is by the grace of the forces of the world. I started washing dishes when I was 15. My big sister worked in a restaurant, and it was time for me to start earning my own pocket money. So I got a job there, thrown into the dish room. It took me not more than a couple of weeks for the boss to see my potential, and he busted into the dish room one day while I was very busy and almost, intimidatingly yelled at me, "Next week, you're working in the kitchen," and I haven't looked back. But what's kept me here is just a pure love for it. Before that I was into maths and science and I wanted to be an engineer. I started working in the kitchen, and obviously there's a few bits and pieces with maths and science that goes with cooking, but the process of producing food day in, day out is really exciting for me.
What is it about that you find really exciting?
Making a dish at home is really different to making a dish in a restaurant. When you cook a chicken at home, you're doing one and you can put all sorts of time and effort into it. But when you're doing it in a restaurant, two things is you've got a lot more time to get it done. You've got a whole day or several days or weeks of lead up and prep and bits and pieces, which all ends up coming together. But also the volume and managing stock in and out of a kitchen, and just little personal challenges is, yesterday I peeled 20 kilos of potatoes in 20 minutes, and today I'm going to do it in 19. Just handling food I find really satisfying, which has grown into the pursuit of more refined handling of produce, which ended me up in Japanese kitchens where it's all of the focus is really, really detailed care in every little step and every little process with every piece of fish and every little vegetable and every piece of meat. Which is super exciting, super satisfying.
I can see that it's that the common denominator between your love of maths and science and your love of hospitality. I can draw that from what you're saying in the details. You love the details. You love looking at that,
Absolutely.
the finer component of what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one thing that I've learned from in Japanese philosophy is obviously on the pass and on the table, your food has to be beautiful, but everything you do should be beautiful at every step of the way. And so, for example, breaking down the fish, you can do that, get the job done and be a bit messy, but it's, that's behind the scenes. No one sees it except for yourself, and there's a bit of personal pleasure that you get out of breaking down a fish, and as you do it, laying out each part and showing that even what your trim is was cut well, and you have nice whole pieces here and there, and you can end up with start with a whole fish and end up with still your whole fish, but it's almost like you've dissected it like a biologist, all laid out on a tray, and it's beautiful just for yourself. How you keep your section, where you put your knife, where you put your spoons or your tweezers or make sure that your tea towel's always folded, never just strewn across the bench. Being beautiful all the time is, your own personal pursuit. That's what gets me through 12 hours. It's, my own pursuit of keeping things beautiful around me all the time.
So this is a big philosophical question, but then what is beauty in a bar then?
it's all attention to detail. It's how you space bottles. It's how you arrange your glasses. It's I think beauty is
or a kitchen as well. So I just realised I didn't ask about the kitchen.
Absolutely, but we'll go with bar because that's an area that the customer sees more, and I think you'll find with beauty is often understated and unsaid. When you've done a truly good job of keeping things, beautiful, people won't really notice. Things that are not beautiful or aesthetically pleasing will jump out at people, will be, obtuse, and if you look at a document of text without reading anything, if there's an incorrect line spacing, that'll stick out like a sore thumb. And it's all those little details that in the end might kind of go unnoticed, but when someone walks away, they leave with a really developed and whole feeling of calm or satisfaction with where they've been or what they've been looking at. If they notice things that are out of place, that's a problem. If they notice things aren't quite right, they'll see them. But if everything is in its place and how it should be, which takes a lot of thought, and it actually goes under the radar, but that's almost a good thing.
Okay. So what are some other things that you can think of that represent beauty in a hospitality environment? You mentioned bottle spacing or line spacing on a menu, but what are some other things?
Dockets that are written in order and easy to read. Opening a cold room and seeing everything that's, you can stand at the door of the cold room and see everything that you have, and it's all in the right spot, and everything's lined up properly. It's really easy in a kitchen to flick something on the floor when you're busy, but then you start to get weighed down by all of this, messiness and dirtiness, and it's kind of a really subconscious thing that gets to you, that you've got a messy kitchen, your work gets worse, and the flow of service starts to slow down and get a bit clunky. So it's everything all the time, being really well taking care of space for ourselves. We're here 12 hours plus a day. I mean, you imagine hanging out in your dirty bedroom for 12 hours, it'd do your head in. Yeah, it
gets to you. Well, the saying is a tidy desk is a tidy mind.
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
And it's the same deal,
thing in the kitchen, same thing on the bar.
Yeah. So I really like that. That resonates with me. Something that I was taught was, even behind the bar, was to wash your Boston tins or your tins straight away. You make a cocktail, you wash your tin, because otherwise they stack up and you get cluttered, and then you're like, oh shit, there's no way to put anything down.
Here's something that certainly grinds my gears. A lot of chefs will want to have a pot of spoons with water in it. Use your spoon on something, chuck it back into that same pot with water and give it a mix around to rinse it off. And sure, that spoon, when you pull it out, looks clean. Yeah. But man, I just can't handle that. And for me, I'd rather have 3 times as many spoons and one use. Chuck it into the dish room, chuck it into your dirty spoons, and when you run out of clean spoons, it only takes you a minute to, clean up a handful of spoons all at once. Those sorts of things, like your Boston, I mean, if you don't clean it straight away, or if you don't have a system to always have a clean one, it's like a dirty desk, dirty mind.
Dude, I'm totally with you there.
Yeah.
I want to move on a little bit further here. So we've talked a little bit about hospitality, what attracted you to the industry, wanting to earn some money. Your sister was working, you wanted to work, and sort of what's kept you there and what inspires you about the industry. I want to ask you about what you're learning about now. What are you learning about? What's pushing you forward?
At the moment, look, I wouldn't say I've had a career full of accolades or done too many things that are truly noteworthy, but I've certainly mastered my universe behind the stove. I don't find it difficult to go to work day in, day out, and never let myself slip, and make sure that my food's 100% all the time. So I'm trying to see where I can do better for my industry or my businesses. So I'm spending a lot of time at the moment on design, so that incorporates menu layout, that incorporates social media, so advertising as well, and thinking about the wholeness of a business, and thinking about what would I like to find when I come into a bar, as far as a deal or a special, or what's available, what's on offer. Thinking about a little bit front of house aesthetics. So I'm trying to develop my curriculum vitae as a chef to incorporate many more of these aspects of a whole hospitality business. Which I think is going to make me plenty more employable and a much more interesting chef to hire in the future.
Cool. So from what you've described there, it's about taking that perspective from, because you started in the back of house, moving to then front of house, thinking about, you mentioned there, menus, social media, etc., and aesthetics of the bar and venues. So taking that front of house perspective on what you're doing and having a holistic perspective on how the operation runs, which is very interesting, coming from that back of house to the front of house. So very cool. What sort of resources are you using to develop that knowledge at the moment?
Brute force, just having to learn because I need to learn.
Just by taking action? Or?
Just by taking action, and at the end of the day, results speak, and what I've done in taking action has shown really good results in-house, in social media, I don't run the front of house team, but the front of house team has started to respond really well to what it is I've been doing to kind of bring the whole venue together here.
Okay, cool. Would you like to explore more resources, or have you found resources online, or is that how you absorb information?
Absolutely. So resources. Look, I've been having to go on difficult programs like InDesign, Illustrator, and etc. Those are pretty difficult to use if you don't have any experience in them. Luckily, my mum, she's a graphic designer and illustrator and has been so since the 70s, so she's helped me a lot with InDesign. She's been using that for nearly 30 years, when it was called PageMaker, version 2. Now I've come across a really handy tool called Easel, which is a web-based platform, which is like a layman's version of InDesign, and the ability that I have to knock out a quick Instagram post that has text and image, that marries up with all of our branding and colour schemes and fonts and etc.
Cool. So it's Easel?
Easel,
I'll look into that myself. We talked about it just before the show. It sounds a bit like Canva as well.
Absolutely.
So I'll have to share Canva with you so you can have a look at that one.
I'd love to have a play around with that one as well.
Cool. Okay, awesome. So thank you for sharing those resources too. I'll touch on that again a little bit later. I want to know just a little bit, I want to delve a little bit further into that. How are you innovating? What are you doing to create change now?
Innovate. As far as, I'll go with advertising. I've found, as our business is concerned, we've been doing a lot of, we all have to keep up with social media. I found a massive difference in response and reach with our posts by simply putting a bit of information over the top of a photo. Now, throwing a photo up, and obviously on Facebook or Instagram, you can put up your photo and add a bit of text kind of below or beneath it. By using any sort of a program and throwing a bit of text over the top of your image, as long as it's not too much information. Keeping it really simple is important. People will stop and look at a good photo, but people will stop and look at a good photo that has a bit of information. If it's too much information, too overwhelming. But the right things like a big dollar sign, and the offerings of, we've got this on, or that's happening, just enough that people need to stop and read it so they don't feel like they've missed out, but they pause long enough to get the information and hopefully get an idea into their head before they move on. The difference has been seriously fivefold in how well our Facebook and Instagram posts are performing.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I want to ask you, we touched a little bit earlier on the fact that you're taking this holistic perspective on hospitality now that you've been in the industry quite a while and learned a lot, and it's becoming about almost giving more to the industry itself, right? What are you doing to motivate and inspire younger people in the? Is that something that you're doing as well?
Yeah, definitely. So, look, I'm nearly 30, and I started when I was 15. I've now given the best part of half of my life to cooking people a hot meal, and there's plenty of honour in that. That's great. Problems with that is it usually comes at a pretty high cost, personally, emotionally, mentally, and financially. Where it's 2017, they're legalising marijuana and they're legalising gay marriage and they're doing all sorts of great things, which I think is moving forward in the world, but something like the hospitality industry is still living in the dark ages. We have a lot of protections for workers and the industry in Australia, but hospitality is one of those places where, ingrained in our culture, we're still a bit, pushed aside and we're not regulated well enough, and it's still expected that you do those 50, 60, 70, and I'm not kidding, people have done 90 plus, 100 plus hour weeks.
Yeah.
They do happen.
All the time.
All the time,
like
and
week
consistently.
after week.
And when we opened this venue, Sasquatch Bar, I did 90-hour weeks, a couple of weeks, but I'm emotionally invested in the business. Great, but I don't do that today. I don't do that week to week. I've worked and been employed in venues where a regular week is 70 plus hours, and doing that consistently will really burn you out. Just crumble your brain. Doesn't allow you any room to be any sort of a person other than a machine or a robot, and that's not very healthy. That's not the key to a good, happy life in this industry.
So tell us a bit about what you're doing with your staff to fix those sorts of problems.
So I've had a bit of a thought about the spread of our hours and the rosters that we do, and I don't think chefs have ever been strangers, or even hospitality staff have ever been strangers to longer shifts. I've always found it a bit of a, adding insult to injury when if you've got 50 hours booked on the roster, that it's over 5 days. I mean, most people are doing 38 hours over 5 days, and they get to switch off and go home and not think about work because their business is closed for 2 days. We often work in 7-day venues. You come in for 5 days, and then your 2 days off, someone will call you, something will go wrong, this, that or the other. You're nervous about leaving the venue for 2 days. So just re-evaluating where we do our hours and how. I've turned it into a 4-day working week for my chefs here, at Sasquatch Bar, and the last place I was the head chef at, which was London Fields. And it's interesting, the response. 99% of it's been super positive. I've had a couple of guys say, I really don't know what to do with 3 days off, chef. And a couple of people have actually asked to come into work 5 days, which is definitely understandable. But in which case, I've had a look at shifts and hours and made an effort to give them their 8-hour days, 9-hour days, rather than 12-hour days. But for me, when I look at it, if I'm going to come and do 12-hour days normally, I may as well only do 4 of them. Doing 3 12-hour days and 2 8-hour days, what are you going to do with half of a morning? What are you going to do with half of a night? You either end up staying late or coming in early, or just sleeping in and doing nothing productive with your time. So, having 3 whole days off a week is amazing. It has changed my life. It has changed the lives of the chefs I have at work. I've got chefs who've got kids. I've got chefs who have businesses on the side that they run. I have a wife and I'm trying to start a family, and the most important thing for me, I'd like to say, before my work is my wife, and I need to be at work on Saturday and Sunday. If I only have 2 days off and it's during the middle of the week, and my wife needs to work late, I only end up having dinner once a week with my wife. It's terrible. Just the opportunity to have, one more dinner with my wife a week has been amazing,
Yeah, awesome. Is that the best way you've found to not just mitigate but eliminate those sorts of problems with even tired staff, or are there other ways you've found to solve those sorts of problems?
It is definitely does a lot. One other aspect of a 4-day working week, if you do 4 days in a row, 12 hours a day, it ends up being pretty hard. Trying to split that up, doing 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 2 off. Even if it's 2 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off, it just breaks it up a little bit. So that in itself is just another step towards mitigating a few of those things. I also like to think that it's helping with, putting a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. We don't have an industry that shuts down very often. We're usually open 52 weeks of the year. So getting holidays, we get them when we can, but having 52 extra days off a year really makes a year of work much easier, and it makes year in, year out, the prospect of being a chef a much better lifestyle, and a life that's more worth living.
I want to open up a little more of a thread on education and training, because that's something that you're passionate about as well. So education and training in the industry. What's available for chefs, and does that ultimately translate to other things? Like, does that increase pay for chefs, or how does that actually affect things?
Look, I think in this industry, you're going to earn what you're worth. I think the biggest part of the problem stems from where you start. Our training system in Australia for chefing is, I'd be willing to say, pretty piss poor. It's built on the idea of an apprenticeship system. However, apprenticeshiping in its proper form, you're supposed to go and bunker down with one person who really knows what they're doing and knows it back to front, and spend a long enough time with them, and we're talking a few years, to really find out everything that you need to know, to learn all the ins and outs. The way people bounce around restaurants these days, if you do an apprenticeship, it's not 4 years anymore, it's 3 years now. In that time, you might work in 3 different restaurants, and restaurants these days are built on formulas. they're built on menus and they're built on recipes that get repeated. In a year, most people cook one menu. Maybe they cook two. It's great if they cook four, season by season. But at the end of the day, you know, all we're really trained to do is how to churn out volume of food. You go one place, next place, the next. So you end up learning 3 sets of recipes. That's about it. With that, you go to school. In all, I'm pretty sure it's about 3 weeks. I think it's 4 weeks the first year, 3 weeks the second, and 2 or 3 weeks the third year at your at your training college, at your institution. Which, when you put it down on paper and you add up all the hours, it's like, mate, like you're getting a couple months worth of contact time with people whose job it is to teach you all the things that you're not learning at your restaurant on your menu. You cook steak, chips and salad all year long in your first year because you don't have any skills. You're only just getting into the industry, and the only person who's going to hire you is someone who needs somebody to peel 20 kilos of potatoes a day. And it's great, you can learn how to peel potatoes really fast. But you know, you spend a year doing your apprenticeship and learning, but you're not really learning a lot. You go to TAFE for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they teach you 1,001 different things, and it's really eye-opening and it's really stimulating. And then you walk away and go back to your restaurant and they're like, cool, here's another sack of potatoes. And that's not really developing chefs who are going to have any A, knowledge, B, skill or range of skill. And I don't think it's very inspiring. No. If you look overseas, almost everywhere, chefing is taught as like a degree. It's you do 2 years full-time training, and that's 5 days a week for 2 semesters, 4 terms, 2 years in a row. And in that time, you're at this school where teachers are training you day in, day out, all these skills. You don't have to worry about service. You don't have to worry about, you know, the cute waitress that you want to get a date with. You don't go out drinking when you're 16, 17, 18, late night with all the other chefs. You don't get necessarily brought into this do-or-die culture, this like brutish, you know, do a million hours and that's what makes you a man sort of culture, because you've got all this time to focus on education and training. When you walk away from it, you've really got a massive base of skills where you step into your first restaurant, and you at that stage you're getting treated like a first-year apprentice, as we would here in Australia. And so for the next maybe 4 years, you're still kind of doing shit-kicking jobs, but you're given a much longer leash, you're given a lot more responsibility, and you also have this massive skill base to build on.
Yes.
All of this information that you've been collecting and developing that you now need to put to work in the real world. And it produces a completely different caliber of chef. I really think that's what's missing out in Australia. Now, for earning money, as I said, if your starting block is peeling potatoes for a year, and the second year you get to, you know, dice onions, and the third year you get to, I don't know, cook the potatoes.
Yep.
And then you qualify, and you've done 3 years of like bone-crushing labour, and you've been earning a pittance. You qualify, and you're like, oh man, I want 60 grand a year. No one's going to pay you 60 grand a year if you don't really have any proper skills to bring to the table. Now, if you are independent and go out and learn yourself, and you're interested in the industry and you're interested in cooking, and you learn for yourself, great, you're going to be able to command a bit of a better wage. But the industry is built on manual labour. You know, this is, in Australia, chefing is considered a trade. We're labourers. And shifting a pile of dirt from one spot to another is good in some places when you're doing massive developments, and there's heaps of money getting thrown around for $1 million, buildings or roads or X, Y, or Z, but the restaurant industry survives on pretty slim margins, and there isn't heaps of money to just throw around to chefs who are unskilled. You do 3 years as an apprentice, do a couple of years after that, and sure, you might as well have done a degree. By that stage, hopefully you could be earning $45,000 a year, but that doesn't taste too good when you've been doing 12-hour days for 3-5 years. The difference is at university, after 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years, you're entering an industry at about $45,000.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel as good when you've already done 5 years of work. You expect that you'd be moving up by then. If you've done 4 or 5 years of work out of university, you might be getting to 55, 60 plus $1,000 a year.
What sort of skills are on top of the training that already happens at those institutions at the moment? Is it theoretical knowledge that's taking place in those institutions, and you're talking about more practical training that would take place at, say, a university or hospitality school?
More practical training in more different, in a bigger variety of cooking skills and techniques, but also...
What sorts of skills and techniques as well, just on that?
Look, you get taught to fry an egg and make an omelette and poach an egg and scramble an egg, and you do all the things with eggs. This is great. This is a great example. On that day at college, you get given a tray of eggs, and there's an examiner who walks around. He shows you once the day before. You get your tray of eggs the next day, and he walks around, and you get to go for broke. Fry as many eggs as you want. When you do one that's good, show the examiner, and if it's good, he'll tick it off. But in a year's time, or 5 years' time, or the first time that you start working a breakfast restaurant, or you have some Swiss dish that has a fried egg on top of it, the last time you've done that was 4 years ago, and you did it for one day. There's a whole lot that you don't see and know about actually frying eggs, and all of the different kinds of fried eggs that you can make, for example. So skills, technical skills, is definitely part of it. You need to really bolster that by doing it day in, day out, day in, day out. As an example, I was super keen when I was young, and I went to chef college and I got taught how to make croissants. Nobody makes croissants by hand. Nobody's doing that. That is only getting done by people who are producing tons of them, and that's their business. I wanted to enter the world as a guy who knew how to whip up a tray of croissants for my family on the weekend. So I'd go to work, I learned it at college, but for the following month, every weekend, I was making croissants, which is kind of a couple days process. You make dough, you got to let it prove, you got to let it sit, you got to roll it out, you got to fold it all in together, you got to do this and that. And this is 12-hour days of work and coming home and staying up till 3 in the morning on my own time, reproducing and just repetition till I was turning out perfect trays of croissants. Now, 10-15 years later, I reckon if you asked me to make a tray of croissants, the first tray would be kind of, a bit dodgy, but still look like croissants, and the second tray would be right there. Yeah. If you've only ever done that once in college, and you then now need to do that as your job, you've kind of got no hope. Yeah. A vague understanding of the technique and skill really doesn't translate to being an actual applicable real-world skill. And beyond that, more than technical skill in a kitchen, there's so much that is not talked about as far as kitchen administration, costing. You do costings, but they're just so obscure and not real-world situations. They ask you to cost out, a dish that's worth $10 and every ingredient's either $1 worth or 50 cents worth, and it's pretty rudimentary. That's not what it's like in the real world. when you're talking about feeding 200 people at a wedding or 20 people in a fine dining setting, all of the considerations that go into what labour you'll need, what dishes you're going to do, and how you're going to get that stock into the kitchen, and when at the appropriate times to be able to process it all. This is all missed out. No one has a good idea of this, and I see it with chefs today, and they know they need the stock, but they don't have an idea of pacing it out and bringing some of that in today and some of that in tomorrow and a bit more of that the next day, because in one day when it all arrives at your door, you're not going to be able to move it all, and you're just going to have a cluttery, ugly looking cold room with boxes piled up that haven't been unpacked because there's just not time to do it, because there's so much other stuff to comprehend and to tackle for the day. So all of these aspects of running back of house professionally are just not covered. They're not brought up, and this is not how we're training chefs these days, and it really takes full-time education.
Yeah, cool. Okay. The next question I want to ask you, Casey, is because we're reaching the end of the episode, is what is your number one industry resource?
My number one resource is probably chefs that I have latched onto, who I've seen as smart guys that I know have better and different experiences to me. Look, we're in Brisbane, and this is a pretty small town, and if you live in Brisbane, grow up in Brisbane and cook in Brisbane, or any city in Australia, and you stay in one spot, you don't move around enough, you won't see enough.
Yeah.
But wherever you get to, having other chefs who've got another world of experience, who've cooked all over the world, who are running successul businesses.
Do you want to share some of those mentors on the show?
No, not by
that's
name.
Okay, no worries, yeah.
People around you, and this is where the concept of apprenticing comes in. All of my real mentors weren't ever my chefs. They're people that I worked alongside with who saw me as somebody, or somewhat of as a peer to them, even though they might be older than me or younger than me, even though they might have been way up the hierarchy or below me in the hierarchy. People who've got smarts and good ideas, and who have a better idea about this job and their industry than the rudimentary stuff that we get trained into us.
I like that, and mentors come up in almost every episode, whether I prompt it or not. My next question for you is, what's your biggest challenge right now, Casey? Bringing a whole business together and making it her. Stepping out of the kitchen, like we've mentioned, and into the whole business and looking at it holistically is really hard the first time, and really hard when I've not been given any training on that. As a chef, sure, I can cook good. I've done my training. What I've learned about restaurants, being an entrepreneur or a restaurateur, I've absorbed by paying attention while I've been working in different venues, working for different kinds of businesses, whether they be big restaurant groups or small independently run venues. Now, the thing is, I have to bring all that information, distill it all down, and turn it into something valuable. It would be great if I had been lent a hand with some of those aspects during my training as a chef, but as my own personal challenge, this is what I need to master now to be able to move forward in the future and open new venues that from day one open with a bang, and don't fluctuate it, and have a clear vision and run cleanly from the time we open the doors. And that teething period that every business has, I think a really important thing with hospitality is, as soon as you open doors, people have expectation. If you have a lot of hype and people come and see the big flash in your opening, but then you can't get it together as a consistent
a consistently running venue for the weeks or months following that. That can be really damaging. So, you know, I definitely want to have more of a hand in opening venues that not only open big, but have a clear set of guidelines and goals set out from day one that encompass what's going to happen over 6 weeks, 6 months, and 6 years after your first 6 days.
Yeah, awesome. So it's about, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth for the next question then, but what's next for Casey Poland?
I've got I've got a few ideas up my sleeves. I'm probably going to have to nut out a lot of these as business plans and venue concepts, and start, going door to door and seeing who wants to back me on them.
Awesome, cool. You want to leave it at that one? You want to give us any more?
I don't want to get people all juiced up too early. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Plenty of these things aren't necessarily very much in the near future, but hey, I'd love to have a swinging, fast food shop, but I'd also love to have a boutique wine and drinks bar that really specialises in cured meats. And sure, people have done that, but I'd like to be building these businesses holistically, and have my own kitchen that's making my own hams off-site that are aging well and getting to a point that they're servable, but when you come in and get them, they are completely unique and completely exclusive to our own venues. I would absolutely love to, as a retirement plan, have a 10-seater sushi bar that gets all of its fish from just out of the sea over there. But that's a bit of a tunnel dream, pipe dream.
Just got to make it happen.
Just got to make it happen, and there's no reason it can't. But there's a lot of other steps in between.
Awesome. Well, good chat today, Casey. Thank you very much for being on the show, man.
Very welcome, James.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
Cheers.
Enjoy the episode? Like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram to stay in the loop at Hospopreneurs. Want to be a part of the show or know a hospopreneur? Send us an email, hospopreneurs@gmail.com. Interviewing creative and innovative minds in hospitality. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.